Would you kindly rise in body or spirit as you are able as we sing our gathering hymn number 187, It Sounds Along the Ages. It sounds along the ages, soul answering to soul. It kindles all the pages of every Bible scroll. The song is turned and singing, from martyr lips it grows, and prophet tongues out ringing, till sleeping nations grow. From Sinai's cliffs it echoed, with freedom was free. It charmed in heaven's market, it found of Galilee. The hammer stroke of Luther, the pillar ceased like rain. The oracles of conquer, our holy earth declare. It calls along justice, it speaks and knows truth. It never lowers stature, and unexhausted forever one race found me, and knowing all time, thou was but cast on music of its eternal shine.
Good morning. It's so good to see all of you. It is. It's a beautiful thing. Hey, I wanted to try, I'm always experimenting, and I like to do experiments from the pulpit, so let's try one for the welcome. I want to do first a silent, and then we're going to do a spoken welcome. But the silent welcome is like this. First of all, you just center yourself here right now. You don't have eye contact with anyone. But I invite you to just be aware of this room full of people from so many places, so many ages, so many conditions of life. Let's just be aware of all this community gathered together. Think of those seated next to you. Think of those seated behind you, in front of you, and around you. Think of all the places that we've come from to be here. And now sort of look around a little bit, just a little bit, and maybe smile and see who's here. And be aware of all the reasons that people come to congregation. Some of us come for just the regular habits, but others of us come when we're in difficult times in our lives. And so as we look around, be aware, be sensitive to the people around you in this community. And now, why don't you take a moment to greet one another? Okay? Do it. Let's try it out. Thank you all for helping to build community. It's so important that when everyone comes here, that everybody feel like they're welcome. So thanks for making that happen. It's good to see everyone.
Let us take a moment to relax and catch our breath. Let us bring our focus here, to this room, to this group of people, and to this moment. We bring a myriad of talents, ideas, needs, and styles. Yet within this diversity, there is a common bond between us. We love this fellowship, and we are willing to work together to improve and strengthen this community of ours and our lives. Let us join together in community, saying our affirmation. Love is our doctrine, compassion is our way. Here we seek to create a joyful home for free religious exploration, build a community of caring fellowship, nurture the hopes, and serve the needs of our world. light this chalice, not because we must, but because we may. We light this chalice not because we have the truth, but because we each come bearing and seeking many truths. We light this chalice in connection across culture, distance, class, and language. We light this chalice that our religion may be a beacon of light, of hope, and justice. We light this chalice to kindle our hearts and our minds. Each week, we light 3 chalices. The first is for this congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Salem. We light our second chalice for our partner church in Šimen-Falva, Transylvania, Romania. And we light our third chalice for our children and youth in lifespan religious education and in our world at large. Let us sing our flame into life. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, unto us
Good morning. Can everybody young or young at heart please join me up front? Hi, guys. Good morning. Hello, hello. Welcome. Hi there. So this month we have been talking about liberating love and different kinds of love in the LRE program. And I found this story today called The Water Bear's Garden. And it is from You and Me Collected Stories, edited by Betsy Hill Williams. A water bear in India had 2 large pots, each hung on one end of a pole that he carried across his neck. One of the pots had a crack in it. At the end of the long walk from the stream on the master's house, the cracked pot arrived only half full, while the other pot was perfect and always delivered a full portion of water. For 2 years, this went on daily, with the bear delivering only 1.5 pots full of water to his master's house. Of course, the perfect pot was proud of its accomplishments, perfect to the end for which it was made. But the poor cracked pot was ashamed of its own imperfection and miserable that it was able to accomplish only half of what it had been made to do. After 2 years of what it perceived to be bitter failure, it spoke to the water bear one day by the stream. "I'm ashamed of myself, and I want to apologize to you." "Why?" asked the bear. "What are you ashamed of?" "I have been able, for these past 2 years, to deliver only half my load because this crack in my side causes water to leak out all the way back to your master's house. Because of my flaws, you have to do all this work, and you don't get full value from our efforts," the pot said. The water bear felt pot, and in his compassion, he said, "As we return to the master's house, I want you to notice the beautiful flowers along the path." Indeed, as they went up the hill, the old cracked pot took notice of the sun warming the beautiful wildflowers on the side of the path, and this cheered it some. But at the end of the trail, it still felt sad because it had leaked out half its load. And so again, the pot apologized to the bear for its failure. The bear said to the pot, "Did you notice that there were flowers only on your side of the path, but not on the other pot's side? That's because I have always known about your flaw, and I took advantage of it. I planted flower seeds on your side of the path, and every day while we walk back from the stream, you've watered them. For 2 years, I have been able to pick beautiful flowers to decorate my master's table. Without you being just the way you are, he would not have this beauty to grace his house. We all have our own unique flaws. We are all cracked pots. In God's great web of life, nothing goes to waste. Don't be afraid of your flaws. Acknowledge them, and you too can be the cause of beauty. Know that in our weakness, we find our strength. The end. Thank you. Thank you. We have a couple of announcements for our youth group. You have been invited by the Youth Collective, which is a group of different youth groups from the surrounding area that all get together for different events. And you've been invited to a Super Bowl watch party on February 11th at 3 p.m. until the game is over. And then we have a special event coming up here for Mardi Gras Masquerade Ball, which is a family fun event for all ages. There's going to be an awesome drag show. There's going to be beer, wine, childcare for part of it, and a big show, lots of music and dancing. So it's going to be a great time. It's $20 for adults and free for 18 and under. Okay? It's going to be a good time. All right, if everybody can please stand up in the middle and create the love arch, we will be on our way. Thank you.
I invite you now to enter into this moment. Just take a deep breath. Be aware of the water leaking out of your cracked side. We're all cracked pots. We've all been bashed and battered some by life. So let's remember to have compassion for ourselves. Have compassion for yourself. And then look around at our community. Nearby, there are hundreds of thousands of prisoners in their cells or in the yard of the prison, wondering about their lives, wondering about their families outside of the prison. Not far away from there is a hospital. Not many visitors on Sunday. But the people are still there, wondering about their health. Look out on the streets as you drive around. Old man pushing a shopping cart full of his belongings, going around. See the children walking home from school. See that kid walking by himself, no friends. See the flower sellers on the side of the road trying to make a living. We look around the city. We look around this community with the eyes of compassion. With the eyes of compassion. For compassion is our path. Compassion is our way. We transform ourselves through our compassion. We transform our communities through our compassion. Compassion for one another is our way. and gratitude. Think now of something in your life that you enjoy or appreciate. Think of some accomplishment, something you've done you're proud of. Think of your life and the good things in it. And then think of how none of this, absolutely none of it, would be possible without other people. Other people around to grow the food and deliver the food. Other people to befriend us, to support us. Other people to guide us and help us every step of the way. May we become aware of our interconnectivity. May we become aware of our dependence upon one another, that our hearts might be filled with gratitude. Simple gratitude for one another, for the friends and the loved ones around us, for everyone, for all members of the human race. Let us be grateful. May it be so. Amen.
Good morning. I'm Eric Schumann, one of your Lifeline's lay ministers, and I'm going to share both joys and concerns that have been entered in our book out in the foyer and also online. The first one is from Iraq's Snow. For the Palestinian people, the Congolese people, the Sudanese people, whose lands have been stolen and their natural resources continuously pillaged. Please pray for them. From Sharon Carey. I had a note from Jack this morning. David is slowly improving. Please continue to remember him in prayer and send healing thoughts as he continues his recovery. From Danielle Scherer. My heart is broken for the friend I lost last week. She was an amazing advocate for recovery and mental health. Loretta, you will be missed. From Pam Lindley, there's an emergency platelet shortage at the Red Cross. Please consider donating to the Red Cross if you can. And the last is from Cora. Joe Bateman's 102nd birthday is this week. Talk about lighting that light within our congregation. You're it, Joe. And one more candle for those joys and those sorrows that remain unspoken. Lifeline's lay ministers are a group who are able to help extend Rick's ministry to the congregation by being there with a listening ear, a caring heart for you. You can reach us at the email address that's on the screen, or you can come visit us today or after any Sunday service in the fellowship hall. We have a table, it's marked, it's on your left just as you walk into Hanneman Hall. And I do have a special announcement that there was an emergency meeting of the Board of Trustees here at the church this past week, and they charged Lifeline's lay minister with providing you from now on with a weather forecast. And so it's my job to give that first weather forecast. It's for today. And in spite of what you see out those windows, this afternoon, right after the service, it's going to be raining cats and dogs. Squeak, the cat, is here. And Kimber, the dog, is here for pet therapy right after the service.
A Network of Mutuality by Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. There are some things in our social system to which all of us ought to now be adjusted. Hatred and bitterness can never cure the disease of fear. Only love can do that. We must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. Before it is too late, we must narrow the gaping chasm between our proclamations of peace and our lowly deeds, which precipitate and perpetuate war. One day, we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which we arrive at that goal. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means. We shall hew out the mountain of despair with a stone of hope.
Thanks, Brenna. Thank you too, Eric, for the good humor you bring wherever you are. He's off with the pets. And for the great music too for the choir. Thanks again. I remember it was 22 years ago. It was in late August of 2001, and my family and I, we made our first and only visit to Ellis Island in New York City. It's next to New York City. I think it's in New Jersey and New York City both. And as I looked at the exhibits and read the history of this place, I imagined all the many souls, 12 million souls had flowed through this point of entry and then spread out all across America, all across the nation. And the displays at Ellis Island, they provided clear visual models showing how America, more than any other nation, is representative of the people of the world. Over time, immigration patterns have shifted from some countries and continents to others. You can actually see really interesting YouTube videos about immigration patterns in the United States, starting with 1700, and you get about 15 minutes. It's fascinating to see how people come from different places and it's just obvious that Everybody is coming here, has come here from so many places in the world. Every race, every culture on earth has brought people to this country that they now call their home. All these tributaries of humankind at Ellis Island, it feels like all the tributaries flow to America. You can see this here in Salem, Oregon. We regularly welcome refugees from countries and cultures far afield. There's a Refugee for Salem organization has a special arrangement with the State Department so that refugees are regularly sent to Salem, and I think it's a great program. Not to mention there is ongoing immigration from elsewhere, so our community, our nation, is becoming ever more diverse. And that day on Ellis Island, it was a memorable, it was kind of a spiritual moment for me, because my recognition of the ongoing narrative of our nation, it was both visceral and spiritual. Being in that place where people from all cultures and climes came flowing through, it enabled me to tap into a deeper awareness and appreciation for the dream of America, this nation where, in spite of all our tragic flaws, we all belong. We all do belong. And where we will continue to mix and mingle until someday we will see the humanity in one another and we will get along. This was the integrationist dream of multiracial unity embraced by Martin Luther King Jr. This is part of it, this flowing together of humankind. Of course, King and other blacks' ancestors were forced to come here on slave ships, not voluntarily through Ellis Island. And he was aware that this nation had inhabitants before the arrival of the Europeans. But still, he fervently believed, King believed, that we could, not only could, but that we should peacefully coexist and come together and create something new and revolutionary. Reverend King made this point in his remarks at our Unitarian Universalist General Assembly in 1966. You can still hear recordings of this online, King speaking to the Unitarian Universalists back in 1966. He was delivering the annual Ware Lecture. It's an endowed lectureship. And that night, King said to everybody, "It is necessary for the church," meaning all faith communities, "to reaffirm over and over again the essential immorality of segregation. Any church which affirms the morality of segregation is sleeping through the revolution. We must make it clear that segregation, whether it's in the public schools, in housing, or in recreational facilities, or in the church itself, is morally wrong and sinful. It is not only sociologically untenable or politically unsound or merely economically unwise, it is morally wrong and sinful." So said Martin Luther King to the Unitarian Universalists in 1966 in June. He dreamed that someday we would overcome such racial separation as segregation represented, and other types of separation too, and that this dream of multiracial unity, the beloved community, would finally come true. He believed it would become true. That was his faith. The moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice, he said. You know, that was King's dream. But where I came from, the Deep South, King's dream was widely regarded by the white community not as a dream, but as the worst kind of nightmare. This mixing of the races, also known as miscegenation. This term, miscegenation, that was first coined in the 19th century by journalists who were writing about the abolitionists who were trying to they were calling for the end of slavery, and the journalists were trying to stir up, we're going to have mixing of the races, and they were trying, the term was used to scare people, White American society not just in the South, but across the nation, was historically so fearful of racial mixing that anti-miscegenation laws were passed in 38 states, and they forbid black people to marry outside their race. Wow, amazing. This racist fear was reflected all around me in Columbus, Georgia. At the time, it was part of a virtual apartheid state. It really was. The elementary school I attended was all white. Black students went to other schools that got considerably less funding and resources. The bus station downtown had a separate cramped room for blacks. I remember thinking, man, that's crowded in there. All the space out here for us. But the blacks were cramped in that room. The department stores had separate water fountains and bathroom facilities, but even without the sign saying whites only and blacks down this way, even without the signs, you could tell which was for whites and which was for blacks by virtue of where they were located and how clean and well-maintained they were. I remember looking at the drinking fountains for black people when I was growing up. My God, they didn't even clean it. The algae grow in there. And the white fountain looks so nice. Segregationists defended this system, claiming that everything was separate but equal. Separate but equal, when this had never been true. The whole system was designed to separate the races and give unfair advantage to white people. And many whites did all they could to preserve this unjust system and directed their ire at anyone who might change this racist reign of tyranny. As for me, I had not always lived in the South. Earlier in my youth, I had lived with my family on army bases in Germany. My dad worked for the Red Cross. It was sort of like him serving in the military, except he wore a different uniform. So we were in this multiracial setting, and it seemed just perfectly natural to me. And it gave me some sense of contrast and perspective. And so I was really taken aback when I saw the level of hostility that was being directed at somebody called Martin Luther King. They didn't use the junior back then, Martin Luther King. When I was 12 or so years old living down there, I didn't know who Martin Luther King Jr. was, but I did know that some white adults in Columbus, Georgia, absolutely despised him. I didn't ever remember hearing anybody talk about him. It's what I saw that told me that story. You may remember there was a novel by James Clavell entitled King Rat. It had just been published. And there was a common bumper sticker around town in Columbus and billboards in Columbus that showed the body of a rat with Martin Luther King's head. And it said, King Rat. This was directly reminiscent of how the Nazis liked to equate Jews with rats in their propaganda. Man, that was a puzzling bump. I scratched my head with that. I was a young kid. I said, what's going on here? But even then, I recognized that this level of dehumanizing hate had to be diluted and deranged. And in a matter of years, I became more aware of the great sea change that was happening in my society as the schools integrated in spite of great racist resistance, and we began to mix and mingle. Not that it was easy during those times. For Black Unitarian Universalist Finley Campbell, this all meant that in the earliest days, having to get his European wife to falsify her racial background and say she was a quarter black so that the two of them could get married in Atlanta in the 60s, where he was teaching at Morehouse College in the 1960s, Finley Campbell was. Otherwise, you don't go jump through that hoop. Otherwise, Finley and his wife, they might have met the same fate as the interracial couple who a bit earlier had gotten dragged from their home in the night by authorities and arrested for a felony violation of the anti-miscegenation laws up in Virginia. So if there's anyone who wholeheartedly embraced Martin Luther King Jr.'s integrationist vision of multiracial unity, it was Finley Campbell Finley. Not that he was alone among Unitarian Universalists in supporting this vision. When Reverend King, he sent out an appeal for clergy, he sent out an appeal all across the country. He said, I need for clergy to show up in Selma, Alabama, so we can march to Montgomery. We have a demonstration, and it's really important that everybody be here who can be here. And scores of Unitarian Universalist ministers from around the country showed up in nonviolent force, even though one young Unitarian Universalist minister with a wife and children, James Reeb, he had his life brought to a brutal end when he was bludgeoned to death. Local hospital wouldn't attend to his medical needs. He had to be, because he was considered black, because he was basically he wasn't black, but he died because of that. That was just one of many tragic losses during the Civil Rights era, most of which were borne by the black community. A decade later, Finley himself was close to such violence, being on the receiving end of some buckshot coming out of the barrel of a KKK member's shotgun when Finley was down in Mississippi in 1979 at a civil rights rally. Just a decade earlier, when Finley was in Atlanta, that was when King was assassinated up in Tennessee. And Finley, who was an ordained Baptist minister at the time, he would become a Unitarian Universalist later on when he moved to Chicago. But Finley helped quell violence in Atlanta during the days following this tragic loss. There was violence all over the country, if you may remember, those of you who are old enough, 1968, all across the nation. And violence like that in Atlanta, the birthplace of King, the prophet of nonviolence, would have been especially hurtful and damaging for his memory. Well, King was assassinated. Presciently, he predicted it in one of his sermons not long before he was assassinated. But the dream, now lodged in our national consciousness, didn't die. But that does not mean that all has gone well and has moved inexorably in the right direction. For one thing, King's dream is much, much bigger than is often realized or remembered. A cornerstone of his dream was economic justice. And King clearly recognized that blacks alone, no more than whites alone, could bring this about. So whites and blacks would have to work together to bring about economic justice. He clearly recognized that this was necessary to address the problem of poverty, because poverty, economic justice in America was caused not just by racism, but also by classism and militarism and the wrongly allocating resources. And that being the case, it made practical and spiritual sense for everybody to unite and work together. King wanted to end segregation because it kept people divided, and hence lacking the power to be found in unity. But for a deeper reason, too, King realized that there was a great social loss when blacks and whites do not get to encounter, get to meet and know and befriend one another. To fully end segregation, it's been realized by many, the racism on which it was founded, embedded in the national psyche, needs to be examined and exorcised. It's good to give time to think about this matter, to have some awareness of the transgenerational impact of racial trauma. The transgenerational impact of racial trauma. It's good to be aware of that, so you know it's there. But it's also good to recognize the strength and resilience of the human spirit. It's always good to proceed and persevere with compassion and understanding, knowing all about this. A couple of years ago, I was having lunch with a young black colleague in the ministry from another liberal tradition, and he had recently moved from the South. He's a good-hearted young man, and he's destined to have a very successful ministry. I liked him a lot. And I was curious as to how he was faring here after coming from a part of the country where there were so many more blacks, and now finding himself in Oregon where there are fewer blacks ministering to a largely white congregation. I was curious, how's that going for you? So then he told me about it. We were eating at a Thai restaurant, and he had an opportunity, and he took a breath, and he said, I went to this business in a nearby community. It's owned and operated by blacks. They're trying, he was telling me this, it's trying to help create a comfortable and a welcoming ambiance for blacks, and whites are welcome there too. And what a great relief it was, he told me, to be there and not feel like he had to watch himself or not be himself. And the way he described this all gave me pause. It was just a glimmer into a world I don't know. And I got a new sense of how the integrationist dream of racial unity is not so easy, especially if you're a minority. It was never easy from the beginning. When blacks integrated public schools, what did white parents do? They sent their kids to private schools. There are some places where integration has worked, but in more places the efforts were and have been, continue to be, subverted. Even though the Supreme Court long ago overturned legal segregation, there were and are still many social, economic, and political forces that stymied efforts to do so, to integrate. But integration did work in some places. It gained a beachhead, and it had good results. Black children, white children, and children of all socioeconomic classes who experienced learning in an integrated environment experienced a long-term benefit in their lives. Having had the positive experience of getting to personally know fellow students across racial and social barriers, this made them much more likely and inclined to send their own kids to school so they could have the same positive experience. There was a psychologist back in the middle of the 20th century, Gordon Allport, who was curious about all of this. He was curious about both the origins of prejudice and discrimination and racism, and he was interested in how to end it. His initial discovery was quite simple. So simple, in fact, that he doubted that it could be so simple. So he doubled down on his research, as did an associate later on in over 36 countries. They did research to see if this is what's happening. Allport's discovery, which became known as contact theory, is that all you need to do to eliminate prejudice, discrimination, and racism is for people across racial, ethnic, and social barriers to have contact with one another, face-to-face interactions over time. And in such multiracial settings, the inherent goodness of human nature kicks in over time with good and friendly results. Allport and his associate noted time and again how contact engenders a deeper sense of trust. It leads to the discovery of common interests, and it results in more expressions of mutual kindness. Such contact helps you see the world through other people's eyes. Such experience subtly transforms you because individuals with a diverse group of friends you naturally become more open and tolerant towards strangers. And furthermore, this kind of contact is contagious in a good way, When you see a neighbor getting along with others from other cultures and races, when you see your neighbor doing it, you begin to think, maybe that's not such a bad idea. You rethink your own biases. This kind of thing spreads. It's a good contagion. However, contact theory only works if there's genuine contact. There can be a facade of integration and contact, such as I saw at my own high school that I attended. That was over 5 years ago, way back then. In my own high school, in my sophomore year, it became legally integrated, but it was socially integrated in the same way that oil and water are, which is not at all. During lunch one day, I remember a black student. He sat at a table in the cafeteria with white students. Immediately, all the white students got up and went to another table. It was so cruel and hurtful. And the students telling me about this were laughing and said, that'll teach them. They can't sit with us. We'll move. So the students, the black students, eventually just kept to themselves. We were in integrated classrooms, but the spirit of segregation, it still kept us apart. With my experience of living in multiracial settings, I was open to forming friendships with black students, especially one classmate I still remember. His name was Columbus Wansley. You know, sometimes you can just tell that a deepening friendship lies in the near future. And that's how it was with me and Columbus. He was a gentle, kind soul. I remember he wore glasses that looked sort of like this, and I took to him and was having a good conversation. And one afternoon, we were having a conversation. One afternoon after classes, we were walking along, engaging in a friendly, get-acquainted conversation, just talking, and suddenly I looked over, and I became aware of a knot of white students nearby who were glaring at the two of us. And at first, I was clueless. And then I got it. I was breaking a racial taboo by associating with Columbus. And I was frightened by this withering scorn, this hostility. And I quickly said, I guess I'll see you later, to Columbus. It was the last time we ever spoke. Years ago, I tried to look him up. I wanted to apologize for abandoning him like that, but I couldn't track him down. But I was trying recently, and I think I might have some leads. So you may hear more from me about Columbus. I hope I can have a conversation with him someday, just to find out what it was like for him and see what would happen. But even today, I mourn the loss of that possible friendship. How enriching it could have been. How much we both could have learned and experienced. You have to wonder how many friendly, loving, interracial friendships and relationships never have had the chance to happen because of the segregation that we still know. It's not much better than it's ever been in America. I want to add in a little bit of a thought here that's not in my sermon, but one of the best ways for a congregation to make friends with black communities is to do things with black congregations. And we were doing that in the past, and we were forming some really good relationships. There's some mostly black congregations in this community, and there's wonderful things that you can do together. And it's a fun way to mix and mingle. So I just wanted to toss that out, because segregation just seems to be so persistent in this country. The dream of integration has faded as segregation has asserted itself in new ways, as Finley Campbell discovered. As the years passed, Many have come to question the persuasive, nonviolent approach of King and his dream of multiracial unity. It's seen by some as too soft, too outdated. You have to push harder. You have to be more aggressive. You have to be more assertive. You have to label people. You have to put them into groups. You have to get people to work on themselves. You have to push hard and be assertive. Except, it sounds good, maybe, except people don't change like that. People don't like to be pushed around. But Finley, he stayed true to this vision, to Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision, and he promoted it by founding the organization known as the Unitarian Universalists for Multiracial Unity Action Council. It's called UMIAC, Unitarian Universalists for Multiracial Unity Action Council. It's grounded in the 7 Unitarian Universalist principles and seeks to continue in the nonviolent spirit of Dr. King, because Finley believed, as do I, that the way to win the hearts and minds of everyone is through persevering, loving contact. Sad to say that the leadership of our own association takes a more strident approach and will not allow to other alternatives in anti-racist work to be considered, so they prohibit UMIAC from setting up displays or sharing its literature at our general assemblies. How unfortunate that Dr. King's message is no longer welcome by the leaders of the association that once invited him to speak and embraced his message back in 1966. It's as though they have lost faith in love, but we haven't. Sometimes it's forgotten that Martin Luther King Jr. was a minister. He was a minister, an American Baptist minister, liberal minister. He considered being a Unitarian Universalist. For a while he knew us, but he didn't join. But he grounded his dream of beloved community in the spiritual principle of agape love. Agape love, an all-embracing love, so sublime and so warm that it will melt icy mountains of hate and prejudice. Dr. King had faith that agape love will someday win the day. And so did Finley Campbell, who died this past August the 18th at the age of 88. And so I wanted to honor him some today because he was a really good soul, a good man. And his organization continues and helps to promote a dream. It's a dream that we cannot and we will not allow to die. Would you join me in a period of meditation and prayer? Be in this moment now as you reflect on your own life and the opportunities in your day-to-day existence to make connections, to smile, to form new relationships with people you've never met. Now is a time of great discord and divisiveness in our nation. And now we need more than ever people filled with the spirit of agape love, making contact. Make contact with your deepest self, and then make contact with other people, day by day. Make contact with your deepest self, and then make contact with others. May it be so. Amen.
We support UUCS through our pledges, our time, and connections with one another. We support the Salem community through donations to the Marion Polk Food Share put into the red wagon that is now coming up the aisle. And for the month of January, Family Promise. The mission of Family Promise is to help families experiencing homelessness and low-income families achieve sustainable independence through a community-based response. Please send your checks to UUCS or visit the website to donate, or put your donations in the red bags that are going to be passed. Thank you for maintaining the community of UUCS and for helping the wider community of Salem.
I hope you'll be sitting in some chair here next Sunday, so please come. Hey, have you ever invited a friend to come and join our congregation and come on a Sunday? It's a good thing to do. I hope I'll see you and other people here next Sunday. So that's what's next week. You can see how to receive a copy of the email, so you can sign up for that. So that'll really let you know what's happening around the community, all the ways that you can be involved and all the activities. So I'll drawing that to your attention. I'm just waiting for you to flip sides. I don't have any other announcements right now, although I will be we're starting a new meditation group. It's going to be meeting for the first time on February the 7th on a Wednesday night. I'll be giving you more information about that, but maybe you want to put that on your calendar. And right now, that's all the announcements.
We take the light from our chalice, lighting the social justice lantern as a symbolic reminder of the light and justice that we carry out into the world. As we extinguish our chalices, let us hear these words by Martha Kirby Capo. Our time together is finished, but our work is not done. May our spirits be renewed and our resolve strengthened. As we meet the challenges of the week to come, this chalice flame is extinguished until we ignite it again with the spark of our communion.
And now, would you please rise in body or spirit as you are able as we sing our closing hymn, number 118, This Little Light of Mine.
Let us join with our community members, guests, family, and friends saying these words together. May faith in the spirit of life, hope for the community of earth, and love for the sacred in one another be ours now and in all the days to come. Blessed be.